If you're at an early stage startup, you're in the right place. We should be able to get our startups over the hump and without guessing or throwing spaghetti. Marketing is an important part of your go-to-market strategy, but you need to understand the why behind the what in order to get clarity, make the right decisions, and get results. Welcome to Season 4, where I'll be asking why in order to help bring more clarity to the messy world of early stage startup marketing. Drew Brucker is the founder and creative director at Brainchild. Brainchild, I love that name. It's a solo agency to help brands with their creative and marketing execution. Okay, so you're a solopreneur. I'm a solopreneur too, Drew. And congrats on that, because the last time that you were on, you were at Lasso. And so you made the jump and now you're a solopreneur. Now you're a master of Midjourney. And if folks still do not know what Midjourney is, I'll quickly explain it. It's a genAI program that generates images from prompts. And I actually have not used Midjourney, but I have used OpenAI's DALL-E a bunch of times. My kids also have used DALL-E, but I get the sense that Midjourney is like a step above, because the images that are coming out from when you post on LinkedIn, they are amazing, like jaw-dropping, gorgeous images.
Thank you. I got to get you on Midjourney. And to be honest, I think it's probably a pretty good time. They're getting ready to move fully away from Discord, which was one of the big barriers to entry, I think. A lot of people are familiar with Discord. It's a little bit scary. There's a lot going on. They've now sort of started rolling out in phases the website for prompting. And so I've been using that for the past few months. And it's just a way better experience. And I think it's not nearly as intimidating for new users. So I'm determined to get you on there. And when you do, I got sort of a guide that I put together last year as I was starting to get better at it. And I'm happy to pass that along to you as well. So
Awesome. And we will talk about a little later in some of the questions, like, how would I use it? How can startups think about Midjourney and using Midjourney? Marketers inside startups or founders inside early stage startups. So I'm excited to dive into that. So you're back, Drew, because you were here, episode 157. It's called How Lasso Makes Time for Play While Driving Revenue. That was the season where I focused on creativity. And of course, I invited you on because you're a very creative person. And so we were talking about this simple equation: marketing equals creative plus revenue. I think at first you had said marketing equals experience plus revenue, but then I tweaked it. And I think you were okay with it.
yeah, whatever works for you.
Yeah.
I think we both settled on the fact that we kind of understood what it meant.
Yeah. It's not just the revenue thing. There's more to it than that. So that's a really good episode. We talk about creativity, what it means, and a lot of cool creative marketing ideas that you were playing around with at Lasso. And so you're back. Welcome back on the show. This is season 4 now, and we're talking about a lot of why questions. I'm asking why. I've been working with early stage startups for 4 years now. And so I developed this approach. It's called MASS, Marketing as a System, the MASS method, where I give early stage startups this process. I help them understand the why behind it. The why and asking why matters so, so much. I think not beyond marketing, but especially with marketing, because I think mindset, why are we doing this? And always questioning, why are we doing things this way? It's really important. And more important than it is about the doing, the tactics, because if you understand the why behind what you're doing, you'll have the clarity to make the right decisions and get results. So continue to push on that point. Let's talk about a why question. Why are you going big on Midjourney? Let's talk about that.
Just to piggyback off what you just said too, I think why can be a dynamic answer too, especially on these teams that you're probably talking with, and just having been a startup leader myself. What matters today may not matter a week from now. And so you constantly need to take inventory of what those priorities are and then be rooted and anchored into the why. And it's not always going to be the same answer, and it may change. So you need to be fluid there. So going to Midjourney though, why am I going big on Midjourney? I think for me, it's like a really good blend of passion and experience. And obviously I've spent close to the last decade in the SaaS startup environment, high growth teams, understand sort of the dynamic of what goes into being a marketer, how many things are asked of you. And again, just going back to the prioritization and what matters most and what's going to impact the business. Right. Actually, after we talked last time, if I remember correctly, that's when I was really, really starting to go deep into Midjourney. And just a little background on me, I spent some time in photography, COVID kids, right? And so, like, some things changed in terms of the logistics of making those things happen. And when something like Midjourney released, where I could essentially create images out of my imagination from my desk, and really there were no, I guess, obstacles to do that, then it really opened my eyes. And the quality that Midjourney went through when I first started to where it jumped, then opened my eyes to, oh, wow, like this is not just fun to create images. I actually could use these in business and the business utility part of it. And so really kind of use that as a proof of concept without even knowing it at Lasso, because we had a very niche audience where there's not a lot of great photography that exists. And working with a small budget on these teams, right? You have to make the most of the dollars that you have. And it wasn't really a great idea for us to go and hire a photographer, different locations, fly them out. And then also all the logistical nature of trying to get them access to the places we want, the demographics, the models, what do they wear, all that stuff. And so that was where this light bulb moment clicked on. It was just like, I think I can solve some of these problems using AI. And so basically, just through trial and error, repetition, and experimentation, just found ways to create prompts that spoke specifically to our brand, our brand colors, our audience, right? So that could be different ethnicities, different ages, different attire that they wear, different locations. And just think about all those things when you've ever felt the pain of digging through a stock photography site. I mean, it's just so hard.
It's so bad. The same lady keeps showing up. The same lady who you're like, I don't know your ethnicity.
That's right. You see images that are just repurposed by other brands, right? And so, like, how can you be authentic? We talk about being authentic and really putting the end user in the shoes that we want them to. And how do you do that without good visuals? And so I was really thinking about that. I was thinking about now more than ever, AI's ability to create content fast, right? And just how this is going to continue to snowball. And so I think words, not to get too meta, I think they're going to mean less, right? Because we're going to see more and more of them. And quality is going to stand out, value is going to stand out. But also, what do you digest faster than text? Images, visuals, what speaks and is going to stop the scroll. And some of those images that I drop on LinkedIn are purposefully to stop the scroll. I want them to be something that pops out in somebody's feed where they're just like, oh, wait, what is this? So I think that's the reason why. I recognize the gap. It's something that I'm passionate about. I've always been more of the creative marketer, so to speak. Like, I love thinking proactively about how we drive that experience to then get to the revenue versus the other way around. And this just seemed like the natural organic path to follow.
Yeah, I love it. No, I'm a big fan of the content that you're putting out on LinkedIn. It really does stand out. So your images are quite amazing. Actually, before I ask you this other question, I have another. Do you think that we'll talk about this, like, more so than startup founders, more so than startup marketers, designers? I work with my designer. Marketing and design just go hand in hand. It's just a natural cohesion there. Designers are going to need to level up their game. Who's Midjourney for? I think it's probably more for someone in the creative realm, like a designer.
It's a great question. If somebody's doing something like we're doing, there's obviously some real value in being able to create images for your business. If you've got a very small team, your bootstraps, something like that makes sense. If you're one of these startup teams, right, where you probably don't have an in-house designer, but you probably outsource to one, that can also get costly. It could be for designers themselves in terms of really speeding up their workflow and their process. I think design, when I think about it, can be somewhat of like a very manual and tedious task. And when you think about like things inside of Midjourney that you can do, like generating mood boards or inspiration, or even find prompts that work really, really well for a brand, and then you can run them in perpetuity, you could basically design on top of those things. Even if it's only giving you 50% of the way there or 30%, that's a huge difference even for designers. And I know agencies, that's a big deal right now too. This isn't going to necessarily replace design in that capacity, but all of our jobs, right? It's changing the day to day of what we do and how we do it.
I always see your work as like realistic. So basically, it looks like photography, right? But you can also change that depending on what style you want to use. You could do more cartoonish, you could do more drawing, like illustration stuff too, right? It doesn't have to be photography.
100%. Like that's one of the other things that I'm not sure if like everybody knows that, but you think about that, right? You can generate things like icons, illustrations. If somebody's using this for artistic purposes, right? Like you can generate something like an oil painting or a sketch. I've seen people do a lot of stuff with like kids' cartoon coloring books, right? They generate the images on there and I guess they're going to use them for a book. So the use cases are endless. And I think they apply to just about any industry you could find yourself in.
That's really exciting. I feel like it takes you way past what Dali offers. Sometimes Dali, I'll put something in and it's like the eyeball is off center and like the lip is kind of coming down or like
Yeah. Yeah.
things that don't really look that great. So I feel like Midjourney is a higher quality, the next level if you want to work on something visual.
I always describe Dolly as sort of like more of like the illustrative side. Like it definitely leans toward that where I think if you're looking for something like photorealism, yeah, Midjourney is probably the best currently. And look, it's not perfect at the end of the day. You still have to iterate and try and test. And I don't get beautiful images on one try. So it's just important to keep that in mind too.
Let's talk about your best prompts. Can you walk me through a scenario where you prompted Midjourney on some idea and then you kind of had to like re-prompt and retweak? And what does that look like?
It happens every day. So I think there are like a couple different avenues that you can go down. And this is where I think Midjourney is specifically really interesting because it's all about these little micro decisions that you're making to then affect the outcome. And what I mean by that is if I've got something in my head and I'm starting from scratch, there are a couple different ways I could approach it. I could start with an empty prompt box and start typing out things that I think should be in the prompt. And that's one way. The other thing that I like to think about, and I tell people that are just starting, is like, have you ever heard of those audio descriptions for visually impaired people, right? They have to be very detailed to describe them. Think like you're describing an image like that, really detailed, specific. If you're looking for something specific when you're prompting, let's just say there's an image that I want to recreate or spin off of. There's a way that I can take that image as an image reference and weight that in combination with my prompt. So I can take certain pieces of it to kind of build a unique image that way. There's another way that they just released. It's called a style reference. So if there are certain colors or aesthetics about an image, not necessarily the subject or the action, but just like the colors and the aesthetics, I can copy that and use that as a style reference to then apply to any image. And so I can start to create cohesive images that all look and feel the same, even though the subject or the action may change. And so the prompts really just depend on what my goal is. I think the other great thing about Midjourney is it's more of a community. You get in there and you can really see visually what everybody else is prompting. And so that sparks ideas because you're like, oh, I would have never thought to do this or use that, or this is a style I've never seen. And you can actually see the prompts that people use. That's a great way to kick off creativity because then you can just pile on top of that and create your own thing. That's super important. I like to say if I'm trying to create something that feels a little bit complex, let me go into Midjourney and see if anybody else has created anything like this, right? So I at least have a starting point of saying, I really like the way that that light looks, or I really like the way that the subject looks. I'm going to tweak it for my particular use case. So it's not just about starting from scratch. And I think that's important to know.
It's really interesting. You're getting me intrigued by using Midjourney. Before we talk about how I would use it, I actually am curious. What are some ideas or thoughts you have on how early stage startups can incorporate Midjourney into their workflow? That's the space you know. You could talk about genAI. I was going to just talk about creative ways to use genAI beyond Midjourney. There are other different things that I've spoken to people I've been using, they've been using. For example, I've heard about you're taking a walk, you record yourself talking about some problem you're trying to solve, and then you prompt ChatGPT. Okay, take a look at this transcript. Now help me solve this problem. What would you recommend I do? And that's pretty interesting, especially if you're a small team or if you're just a solo team. Having that teammate help you brainstorm, think of solutions. That's game changing. So, but let's focus on Midjourney first, because I'm curious how you think early stage startups can incorporate Midjourney into their workflow.
One of the first use cases that I found was really, let me just kind of take you back to what I said about that stock photography, professional photography gap. It's very difficult to create images at scale that feel like your brand, feel like your audience, feel like, your colors, all those intangibles. And so how do you do that outside of using AI? It's really just stock and professional photography. And that's a challenging thing because either choice has a ton of cons that come with it. So I think one of the ways that they can do that is really approach this similar to what I sort of bumped into organically at Lassa, which is I wonder if I can create images across the board that have different subjects, different actions that feel like my brand and build out an on brand library of images that my entire team can access or anybody in the company can access for any type of medium or channel. When you think about all the ways your company uses visuals, it's a lot. It goes beyond just social media. It goes to your website. It goes to ad creative. It goes to slide presentations, whether they're internal or external, iconography, illustrations, case studies, collateral, like training, all those things can roll into this. And so when I think about that from a creative perspective, I can save a lot of time, a lot of money, and my creativity, I can actually leverage it. I'm not compromising in the sense of I get a finite number of images from a professional photographer, or I'm just at the mercy of what stock photography has available. And so this really allows that customization to come in. If my audience is a 55-year-old black male with a beard that wears all black clothing to a live event, I can do that. If that same audience is somebody that's a 26-year-old female that wears that same, I can do that. You're probably not going to find those images doing stock, and it's going to be a pain to do that professional. So I really think of it's this on-brand library that your entire team can access and use for different things on demand. And I think that's extremely powerful because it's front-loaded work that once it's done, and you can run these things in perpetuity once you find problems that work, and it's a problem that's solved. Is it extremely easy to do right now? I don't think it's easy to do. I think that's why people hire someone like myself to do it, because there are a lot of reps and trial and error that come with that. I think that's something I'm trying to improve as a solopreneur is how can I tighten that up? And it's just the way that AI is right now in terms of its maturity and consistency. I've got to play around with it a lot more than I would like to from a business standpoint. Personally, it's part of the process. I enjoy it, but tightening that up. So I think this is a problem that's going to be solved for teams. It's going to continue to get better. We've already seen this get better from the time I talked to you, even 6 months ago, before that. And so, what does this look like a year from now? I think this is going to be extremely easy for people to access. The consistency is going to be better, the quality is going to be better. And it's really going to be an interesting playing field once we start seeing things like Sora, OpenAI's text to video launch, which looks leaps above what's currently out there with Runway and Pika. And there are no limits. I mean, I think Midjourney is also working on something that's 3D related. So what does that look like?
You know what I just saw today? Audrey Hepburn,
Yeah.
just a
Yeah.
photo of her. And then right underneath that, she's singing a pop song that blows my mind because you can make someone look like that's their song. She never did that. So you take a photo, you take the song, the vocals and like how she might sound. And then her lips are moving and everything. It's just crazy.
We always say B2B is boring. You hear that all the time. I think something like AI really opens the doors creatively to stand out above competition in the feed because you're not limited by what already exists. And it doesn't take nearly as much time or money to do it once you've acquired some of those skills.
Totally. So let's talk about that because let's say that I'm always thinking about how do I stand out with my content efforts? That's really the dream. And it's also a struggle, I think, not just for me, not just for startups. Like everyone's trying to position themselves and differentiate themselves and stand out. And it's just hard. It's hard. And I try to do that with my show. But then every season, I'm like, okay, I need to go in a different direction because it's starting to feel and look like too much like that other marketing podcast, right? So I'm always kind of thinking, how can I go above and beyond? How can I make sure that this is different enough? What's my wedge? Where am I uniquely positioned that's separate from other people out there? So, my question to you is how would you recommend I do that if like we were to work together? Do you work with solopreneurs? And if you do, what kinds of things are you doing? It's not just kind of like, okay, let's just think of some images and like put it out on social media. What's like a cohesive strategy that you talk about?
I don't work with currently any solopreneurs. I'm working with a few brands, like one that is a brand new brand, right? So they've got their brand guidelines, but beyond that, they have no visual assets. And so starting from scratch. And we talked about a lot of those things in depth in terms of what do we want this company to be? What's the personality? What's going to resonate? How are they going to see themselves in these images? And so that was something that we talked about. And I think it really is a matter of me really getting to know the brand as best as I can to save me time, right? From going down different rabbit holes that don't match up to ideally what you want to communicate visually. So I think for you, it's really understanding your brand, the personality, who you're reaching, all those things that I would do as a marketer to try to figure out. And then what's going to stop the scroll? What's a unique perspective that we haven't seen before? I think people are reading less even than 6 months ago, a year from now. I don't know. Maybe it's just me and my ADHD and skimming, but
Maybe on social media. I heard that the way that the algorithm was changing was like, it's not enough to just put a quick thing in there, a quick image, something quick. Now, what's going to rank more and get more impressions is you really have to get deep into a topic. I don't know if that's necessarily true because sometimes I see somebody writing a whole post and given this is data point one, me, I see someone writing like this
yeah.
whole long, lengthy post, just text. And I'm like, I don't want to read this right now. I have this on my mind. I have that on my mind. Right. So it's kind of still about the quick things, at least on social media. But like when you start to dive into things like podcasting, people spend 30 minutes, 45 minutes with you. When you start to create like YouTube videos, people are watching that all the way through from start to finish. So I think it depends on the channel you're on. This is super intriguing for me. And just like a different workflow of how you essentially now anyone can take over that designer seat if they want to. That goes beyond Canva. You know, like early stage startups, they use Canva a lot. I get it. You just use Canva.
And Canva's come a long way, but like, are you staying up to date with all the new AI components that just dropped in Canva? Or are you one of those markets that's just been using it the same way? Because I think that's important too. Canva has gotten a lot better, but is that person fully leveraging what's available to them within Canva? Because it's actually gotten quite good. But yeah, I agree.
This was great. I just wanted to learn more about what you're building with, and you're just dabbling so much in Midjourney and kind of the information behind how you do it and your recommendations for moving forward for the future of startups and how they can leverage Midjourney. At the end, I like to ask my guests, what question do you have for me? And if I don't have time to answer it, which I probably won't, I will create a bonus episode and I will answer it in that bonus episode. So, what question do you have for me?
I always think it's interesting to ask someone like you that's just having so many of these conversations at scale lately. What are some of the creative marketing ideas that either you or somebody that's been on your show has shared that you think is 100% worth experimenting or playing around with at this point?
Drew, it's a great question. It brings me back to season 3 because I explored that a ton. That was really my premise, right? I want to talk about creativity. What does it mean? What does that mean at an early stage startup? What are you doing that's creative? Why is it creative? Can you measure the impact? If so, how do you measure the impact, right? Because a lot of times, creative stuff, it's hard to measure. So I'm going to answer this in a bonus episode because I think I have a lot of great things to tell you about. But I want to say thank you. Thank you for coming on for round 2. And if anybody wants to find Drew, you can find him and you should look him up. He's on LinkedIn, Drew Brucker. And I believe you can also join Drew's Midjourney workshop, and I'll include the link in the show notes. So thank you, Drew. This was great.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to this weekly episode of Modern Startup Marketing. New episodes are dropping weekly, so make sure you're following wherever you get your podcasts. You can find me on LinkedIn, search for Anna Furmanov, visit my website to learn more about how I help early stage startups, go to furmanovmarketing.com, and don't forget to leave a review if you're loving the show.